South Korean President Yoon Sukhyun meets his Vietnamese counterpart Vo Van Thuong in Hanoi and agrees to step up security cooperation in the face of North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. And Korea vows to double the number of concessional loans for that country by 2030 for official development assistance. With the rainy season approaching in Korea, all hands are on deck to prevent possible damage in areas with a high risk of flooding. Tonight, we look back on the faces of patriots and war veterans that war brought back to life using AI ahead of the 73rd anniversary of the Korean War, which ended in an armistice 70 years ago. It's June 23rd, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. In Hanoi, South Korean President Yoon Sukhyun meets his Vietnamese counterpart, Vo Van Thuong, on the second day of his state visit, during which they agreed to step up security cooperation as President Yoon labels North Korea's nuclear and missiles as the most urgent security threat in the region. And Korea vows to increase the amount in concessional loans for that country by 2030. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young is in Hanoi to fill us in from the ground.
South Korea and Vietnam have penned over a dozen deals to initiate their strategic partnership to overcome regional geopolitical and trade uncertainties. During his three-day state visit to Hanoi, President Yoon Sukhyun on Friday held a summit with his Vietnamese counterpart Vo Van Thuong, signing a joint action plan.
오늘 양국은 포괄적 전략 동반자 관계 이행을 위한 행동 계획을 채택하고 한 베트남 관계를 더욱 내실 있게 발전시켜 나아가기로 했습니다.
Vietnam prioritizes South Korea in economic and social development projects and foreign policy, and wishes to develop a comprehensive strategic partnership practically and effectively in the long run.
Seoul and Hanoi first agreed to establish an annual dialogue channel between their foreign ministers and strengthen Vietnam's maritime security capabilities through naval and coast guard cooperation, as well as the transfer of retired Korean vessels. Their new security deals were reached amid growing geopolitical tension and territorial claims in the South China Sea. A presidential official stressed that the amount of retired vessels transferred to Vietnam would not be at a level that would raise eyebrows in Beijing. Both Seoul and Hanoi wish to have an orderly state of relations in the Indo-Pacific for regional peace and global trade. On economic relations, the leaders agreed to establish a working group with a goal of reaching $150 billion in trade volume by 2030. To foster greater trade ties, the two sides penned MOUs, including the recognition of driver's licenses, certificates of origin, and labour-related rules, and greater support for startups. To collaborate in crucial future industries, the two sides will establish a mineral supply chain centre and cooperate in energy and infrastructure spanning LNG power generation and smart cities. Seoul will also increase its economic cooperation funding for Vietnam from the current $2 billion to $4 billion by 2030. It will also expand grants for development projects in crucial areas like transport, health, climate change and digital transformation, as well as joint science and tech cooperation. In light of South Korea's efforts to become a global pivotal state as a more active stakeholder in the global community, the 11-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations is also a crucial partner in securing sea lines for trade and regional stability, including handling a nuclear North Korea. Thuong on Friday said Vietnam is ready to contribute to denuclearizing the Korean peninsula. A senior Yoon official told reporters Seoul takes this to mean Hanoi supports denuclearizing North Korea and will closely cooperate with Seoul on Pyongyang's provocations and Korean peninsula security issues.
Going forward, Yoon said he hopes Seoul-Hanoi ties will expand as a gateway to establish a comprehensive strategic partnership with the ASEAN as a whole, marking 35 years of their dialogue partnership in 2024. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Hanoi.
Also in Vietnam, President Yoon earlier on Friday sat down for a luncheon with executives of Korean companies operating in Vietnam. The business leaders shared their views on the current status of the Vietnamese market and the achievements Korean companies have made there in a variety of sectors, including electronics, automobiles, and chemicals. Yoon appreciated the efforts of the business people and pledged active support in resolving any difficulties. After the luncheon, Yoon took part in a South Korea-Vietnam business forum where 600 businessmen and government officials from both countries discussed cooperation in investments, supply chains, and high-tech industries. On Saturday, the president will meet with a group of young people from both countries at the Samsung R&D Center, where he will have talks on expanding joint research. And President Yoon sought to promote broader corporate and cultural connections between Korea and Vietnam, joined by a large business delegation in Hanoi. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
President Yoon Sukhyun touted Vietnam's economic potential and showed his support for Vietnamese businesses looking to enter the South Korean market. The president also underscored the importance of the next generation while at the Korea-Vietnam Partnership Fair held at a convention center in Hanoi on Thursday.
베트남은 젊고 역동적인 인구 구조를 가지고 있고 또 고도로 숙련되고 훌륭한 교육을 받은 재능 있는 청년들이 아주 많습니다. 베트남의 혁신 생태계 성장을 이끌고 있는 여러분이 바로 주인공입니다.
This event was arranged by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy and included a K-Industry Showcase section showcasing products from major Korean companies, a Young Tech Startup Grand Challenge section to discover young entrepreneurs in the ASEAN region to start a business in South Korea, as well as an area providing consultation to businesses looking to enter the South Korean market. According to the top office, some 1,700 people attended the event.
창의와 혁신에는 국경이 없습니다. 세계는 이미 하나의 시장이 되어가고 있습니다. 자유와 창의가 존중되고 우수한 인재와 자본이 교류하는 과정에서 혁신과 성장이 이루어집니다.
Also at the K-Food Festival stand where Korean food was on show along with Korean Vietnamese fusion menus, Yoon chatted with Vietnamese youth and tried kimchi banh mi. President Yoon also attended a separate cultural exchange event at the same venue later. There, Vietnamese Vice President Vo Thi An Tran joined as well as K-pop groups Monsta X and AB6. AB6 performed its song Loser with a Vietnamese K-pop dance crew. Vietnamese pop singer Min also drew a crowd by singing Korean singer IU's My Old Story in Korean. In the meantime, President Yoon hosted a dinner for his 205-strong traveling business delegation to promote South Korea-Vietnam exchanges further. With Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Jae-yong and other big names attending the event, he called on businesses to look for opportunities in Vietnam.
글로벌 경기 둔화와 공급망의 교란, 에너지, 기후 위기 등으로 기업 환경이 많이 어렵습니다. 저는 이러한 위기의 극복을 글로벌 공급망 재편의 중심지이자 떠오르는 소비 시장인 이곳 베트남에서 찾을 수 있다고 생각합니다.
Saying a new opportunity is opening up for South Korea as it has a tight link to Vietnam compared to other nations, Yoon called on businesses to take the lead and vowed to provide support. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
In other news, the Korean government says it'll find ways to get real-time information from Japan to get a clearer view of whether its neighbor is adhering to the discharge standards for the release of Fukushima wastewater. Choi Min-jung has more.
The South Korean government has vowed to seek ways to get real-time information from Japan on the discharge of Fukushima wastewater. During its weekday briefings on the matter, the government said this is to confirm that the discharge goes in accordance with the plan.
The most important thing for us is to check and monitor whether Tokyo Electric Power Company can continue to meet the discharging standards when the actual discharge begins, and ensure that the facilities and equipment are operating properly.
The official added that the Japan Atomic Energy Agency recently disclosed the results of the K4 tank's water level analysis on its website. These tanks store water treated through a purification system known as Advanced Liquid Processing System, or ALPS, before it is released into the ocean. The Korea Institute of Nuclear Safety is currently reviewing the data. Meanwhile, the government announced that it opened a wastewater policy information platform containing the government's response and information related to the discharge of contaminated water. There, the public can check the current status of radiation testing of imported foods. Owners of fish markets can use the website to apply for radiation testing on their seafood. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Korea will soon see the nation come under heavy rain as the monsoon season approaches. Forecasts say Jeju Island and the southern regions will be the first to be hit by torrential downpours. This is prompting the authorities here to thoroughly check up on safety measures. Our Han Sung-woo has the latest.
Heavy monsoon rains expected to pound South Korea, starting with Jeju Island and the southern regions on Sunday, before spreading nationwide the day after. In fact, forecasts are predicting heavy, localized torrential rainfall in many parts of the country from Sunday to Tuesday.
APEC begins our forecast. The monsoon will start in Jeju 6 days later than average and in the central and southern regions 2 days later than average.
The monsoon front will then reportedly head down south mid-next week before moving back up north again to pour heavy rain across the country. And in preparation for what's to come, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo on Friday visited the Korea Meteorological Administration to check on safety protocols, including emergency text messages that will warn the public of floods and other natural disasters.
We must be fully prepared for climate disasters. I asked the Korea Meteorological Administration to devoutly play the role of cavalry scouts who prioritize public safety over all else and swiftly but accurately alert the people on such disasters.
He also made his way to flood-prone homes near the Dorimcheon stream and urged for greater efforts, like installing sturdy water shields to better protect the people there, especially those living in semi-basement apartments known as 반지하. Prime Minister Han also called on relevant ministries and local governments to make sure residents can be safely evacuated from their homes, if required. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Central banks in Europe have raised their key rates to tamp down inflation, while more rate hikes are likely in the U.S. following a recent pause. Experts raise concerns over the possibility of an economic recession. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young has more.
Central banks around the world are still tightening their monetary policies to tame inflation. The Bank of England raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point to 5% on Thursday, reaching their highest level since the global financial crisis in 2008. An increase of 25 basis points was expected, but consumer prices during the month of May accelerated at a faster pace than expected at 8.7%, leading to a larger rate hike. The same day, Norway also hiked its rates by 50 basis points, while the Swiss National Bank raised theirs by 25 basis points. Even Turkey has almost doubled its interest rates to 15% after a 2-year freeze. Just a week after the U.S. Fed's brief rate hike pause, its chair Jerome Powell has once again hinted that more hikes are on the way, saying there's still a long way to go. With the U.S. Fed and other central banks eyeing more rate hikes, there are growing concerns of a global economic recession.
That is going to make the chances of recession in the second half of the year as well as the next year higher. Also, the consumption and investment seems to have come down compared to, say, 2 or 3 years ago, the pre-pandemic period, and that's in major part because of the rise in interest rates.
He added that these are the reasons to have a pessimistic outlook for this year's global economic growth, which is at a lower level compared to last year's growth rate. In fact, according to the World Bank, the latest global growth outlook for 2023 has been set at 2.1%, which is well below the 2022 growth rate of 3.1%. Meanwhile, the expert says that the Bank of Korea, which has once again frozen its key interest rate in May, is expected to maintain the current level as the country's inflation rate is significantly lower than some European countries and the US. However, it may have no choice but to raise the rate when considering the currency market. This is because if the gap between the Fed's rate and the BOK's policy rate widens, there is an increased likelihood of capital outflow and interest rate instability. 신하영, Arirang News.
The missing submersible in the North Atlantic Ocean was found destroyed due to a catastrophic implosion, killing all 5 people aboard. Searching for more debris, officials try to piece together what went wrong there. Chung Won-ju has the details.
The Titanic-bound submersible that went missing Sunday suffered a catastrophic implosion, killing all 5 people on board. The Titan, operated by the U.S.-based company OceanGate Expeditions, had been missing since contact with its surface support ship was lost on Sunday morning. A search and rescue operation had pinned hopes on the vessel's 96-hour supply of oxygen. On Thursday morning, however, the U.S. Coast Guard said it had discovered a debris field within the search area for the missing sub, including the vessel's tail cone and 2 sections of the pressure hull. Rear Admiral John Mauger of the 1st Coast Guard District told reporters that an unmanned deep-sea remotely operated vehicle deployed from a Canadian ship spotted the wreckage of the submersible about 488 meters from the bow of the Titanic, 4 kilometers beneath the surface in a remote corner of the North Atlantic.
In consultation with experts from within the Unified Command, the debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber. Upon this determination, we immediately notified the families.
An underwater implosion refers to the sudden inward collapse of the vessel. Experts say that at the depth of the Titanic wreck, such an implosion would have happened in a fraction of a millisecond. The search for more debris from the submersible continues as officials try to piece together when the implosion occurred and what exactly went wrong with the sub. Rear Admiral Mauger added that it will take time to determine a specific timeline of events in the incredibly complex case of the Titan's failure. A retired FBI special agent and former leader of an FBI dive team told CNN that it won't be possible to know what happened to the submersible unless you recover the majority of the vessel. The 5 passengers aboard the Titan were the company's founder and chief executive officer, Stockton Rush, who was piloting the sub, along with British billionaire and explorer Hamish Harding, Pakistani-born businessman Shahada Dawood and his 19-year-old son Suleiman, and French oceanographer and Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet. Chung Won-ju, Arirang News.
It is time for our weekly arts and culture segment. We have our culture correspondent, Song Yujin, in the studio. Hi, Yujin.
Good evening, Jungmin.
Evening. What do you have for us today?
Also, Jungmin, can you believe it? We're already way into half of this year because we're heading into the end of June. And June here in South Korea has kind of become a month dedicated to honoring and remembering the patriots and war veterans who fought for Korea. And we recently observed Memorial Day on June 6th. And this Sunday, which is June 25th, marks the 73rd anniversary of the start of the Korean War. And if we look a bit further, on July 27th, that marks the 70th anniversary of the signing of the Korean Armistice Agreement. So ahead of this dates for this week, I explored the diverse ways South Korea is commemorating the Korean War and expressing gratitude to those who fought in it.
June 25th, 1950, the start of the Korean War. The war divided Korea in two and claimed the lives of more than 1 million people. Every June, people remember and honor those who fought in the war. These days, cutting-edge technology plays a key role. This lab in the city of Suwon, just south of Seoul, is where war veterans are brought back to life using the magic of artificial intelligence. With just a few clicks and a bit of typing, old blurry photos become crystal clear, bursting with color. Professor Woo Simon and his team are working wonders with an AI model called Generative Facial Prior, recovering the images of around 400 Korean War veterans.
Applying AI technology, like latest technology for something public good and socially good purpose, and acknowledging those hidden heroes and hidden war heroes and unknown war hero, we can actually acknowledge them through this opportunity is actually great.
And there's more. You can take a journey back in time with the help of augmented reality. The War Memorial of Korea, a museum dedicated to preserving the history of the Korean War, has introduced an AR game. With your smartphone and a complimentary guidebook from the museum, you become a Korean War soldier desperate to regain memories of the war. Solve puzzles and complete missions that walk you through the 3-year-long war, from its beginnings on June 1950 to the signing of the Armistice Agreement in July 1953, while exploring the museum's exhibition halls. There are also exhibitions paying homage to the war heroes. This one at the Seoul Museum of History in the city center showcases the personal belongings of war veterans, along with magazines and articles documenting the war. From battle-worn uniforms and badges to heart-wrenching photographs of war refugees, it's a solemn reminder of the sacrifices made 7 decades ago. From exhibitions to AR and AI, this is how Korea continues to honor and remember those who selflessly gave everything to save the lives of millions.
Using artificial intelligence and augmented reality is just truly fascinating. Yoon, tell us more about your experience there.
Well, to first talk about the AI photo recovery project, to be really honest, before I visited the lab, I kind of questioned how is this AI software or program kind of different from Photoshop that we're already familiar of. But after visiting the lab, I realized that my thoughts were completely wrong. And what caught my attention most was the amazing speed and the high quality images that this program restored. So in less than a minute, the decades-old images underwent a remarkable transformation with enhanced resolution, clarity, and even vibrant colors. And some of them, they were initially of such low and poor quality that you couldn't really see a person's face miraculously, but AI miraculously restored them. And to talk more about the AI game, I kind of had doubts about how engaging and immersive it would be. It was actually my first time playing an AR game, but after playing the game, as you saw in the report myself, I didn't know that time flew. It took me about an hour to finish all the tasks. And while doing this, I've learned about the Korean War and its history at school, but I actually gained much more deeper understanding of the overall history of the Korean War. And this is kind of like a good news for our international viewers. This game is currently available only in Korean, but according to the War Memorial of Korea, they're planning to release an English version next month, July. So I bet a lot of our international viewers would be excited.
Don't miss your chance. And Yoon, as you mentioned, Sunday marks the 73rd anniversary of the Korean War, and next month we will commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Armistice Agreement. Are there any upcoming events we should keep an eye on?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because there is a very exciting development in the AI photo recovery project that I mentioned in my report. So currently, this research team, they are in the final stages of their recovery project. So about 300 out of 400 images have been fully recovered. And once they're completed next month, the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs will present these recovered, completed photos to the family members of the war veterans at a special commemoration ceremony that celebrates 70 years of signing the Korean Armistice Agreement. So I think that this is a very deep, meaningful gesture that really ensures that we will not forget all the sacrifices that these war heroes have made, and that this legacy will continue to live on.
Right, looking forward to it. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin, thank you.
Thank you.
A scorching heat wave will sweep across much of South Korea this weekend. Maximum temperatures will be higher than today at 32 degrees Celsius. Under blazing sunshine, the sun's UV radiation will be intense as well. When exposed to intense heat and strong UV rays, heat-related illnesses may occur. Drink plenty of water and avoid staying outside for too long. And light showers are in store for Gangwon-do province tomorrow. By Sunday, Jeju Island and parts of the south coast will see the first round of monsoon rain of the season. The amount of rainfall is subject to change, but heavy rain is expected across the country on a frequent basis. The downpours may affect low-lying areas, valleys, rivers, and streams with flooding. This will cause groundwater levels to rise, so please take precautions beforehand. And morning temperatures will be a couple of degrees higher than the seasonal norms. Tomorrow, Seoul will start off at 22 degrees. Daytime highs in Seoul and Gwangju will get up to 32. Daegu will reach 31 degrees. Early next week, the entire nation will see showers. With the rain, temperatures will cool down a tad. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is News Center for this evening. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.
Arirang TV is conducting a quality and satisfaction evaluation to enhance the broadcast service for viewers worldwide. Please visit our website at www.arirang.com to provide your honest opinions. Participants will be entered into a draw for a chance to win prizes. 2023 Overseas TV Viewer Survey. We look forward to hearing from you.
We are trendy. We are tradition. We are Busan. We are future. We are nature. We are Busan. We are energetic. We are eco-friendly. We are Busan. The city ready for World Expo. We are Busan. Busan is ready for World Expo.
feels so good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Maybe this is forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Forever. 춥지 않은가요? 처음 태어난 이별에서 사는 우리 손잡아요.
Hello everyone, it's Friday and you're watching Within the Frame. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. Last year, South Korea and Vietnam marked 30 years of ties, and now the two nations are looking forward to another 30 years with the bilateral relationship elevated to a comprehensive strategic partnership. President Yoon Sukhyun is currently in Vietnam for a 3-day state visit, having a summit with his Vietnamese counterpart Vo Van Thuong. Two leaders agreed to strengthen ties in a broader sense, ranging from trade to security. What was discussed and how are the bilateral relations expected to further enhance? For this, we invite Professor Yoon Sukhyun from Chungang University, and we also have Professor Park Jang-sik from the Donga University, who is also Director of Institute of ASEAN Studies. Now, first question to our Professor Park. South Korea and Vietnam established a comprehensive strategic partnership last year during a summit in Seoul, and now President Yoon is in Hanoi meeting with his Vietnamese counterpart. What is the significance of this state visit?
Yes, as we all know, Korea established the diplomatic ties with Vietnam on December 22nd. I remember 1992, shortly after establishing historical diplomatic relations with China. As last year, 2022 marked the 30th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relation between Korea and Vietnam. So President Yoon invited Vietnamese President Nguyen Xuan Phuc at that time. Now he resigned in early 2023 to discuss and enhance the cooperation between two nations on December 5th, 2022. This time, in a sense, Yoon's state visit to Vietnam is a reciprocal visit to Vietnamese president's visit last year. And it is President Yoon's first visit among ASEAN countries, except for his participation in the ASEAN summit in Cambodia last year. Even if the previous Moon Jae-in administration chose Indonesia for its first visit after his presidential inauguration, Yoon would choose Vietnam this time. This seems to mean to emphasize the gravity of Vietnam, among others, from the perspective of a Yoon government.
Right. Two nations ties is indeed important and significant in that this time is actually President Yoon's first bilateral visit to a member of ASEAN, right? Now, Professor Song, how would strengthening ties with Vietnam contribute to having bigger voices in the international arena, both economically and diplomatically, given that both countries are involved in multilateral organizations such as APEC and IPEF?
Yeah, as you know, the APEC is one of the largest economic partnership, free trade economic areas. Actually, not a free trade, but try to be a free trade countries. But it is an intergovernmental forum for 21 member economies in the Pacific Rim. And it started from 1989, and South Korea and Vietnam has participated in this APEC. Actually, APEC starts from the ASEAN, which has started in mid-1980s, and with the successful some economic cooperation among the member countries in ASEAN countries, ASEAN members, then it is expanded to Asia-Pacific economic cooperation has been with the participating of the United States and several the Pacific Rim countries. Actually, the purpose is to compete with some Europe and North America free trade agreement, and those advanced countries cooperation of the economic circle. Then in Asia Pacific region is necessary. But since the United States has started the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But however, Donald Trump, the ex-president of the U.S., has withdrawn from the TPP. And then Joe Biden, current U.S. president, has offered a new Indo-Pacific Economic Framework Prosperity. And this is started in May 23, 2022. So this is quite criticized by some other members because it has some economic agenda. Rather, it is criticized as some political grouping rather than the economic grouping. So I believe both countries are in both some economic trade agreement cooperation circles, but still they both work and they could benefit from each other as long as they stay in the APEC structure rather than IPF.
Right, I see. They could benefit from each other as long as they're in the APEC together. Now, Professor Park, seeing the ties in a little bit more broader sense, Vietnam is, as far as we all know, is an ASEAN country, right? And many point out that closer ties with Vietnam are especially important in taking the relationship between South Korea and ASEAN to another level. Now, why is ASEAN important and why focus on Vietnam?
Yeah, Vietnam has historically been considered as the country that we are most familiar with among ASEAN members countries. Of course, we had, first of all, unfortunately encounter in the past with the Vietnam War. But because of that, it has actually become a country that we have come to understand and be friendly somewhat. So our Korean people have stayed there more than other countries. And as our business started to do well, the number of Korean people increased beyond the imagination there. Also, in terms of social-cultural aspects, the influence of Korean wave has been great there. And a lot of people from both countries have communicated each other, among others. Probably the number of Vietnamese women as Korean wives here has also increased significantly. Moreover, historically, Vietnam has not had a close relationship with China. So you might think that it would be easier to include Vietnam in the framework of the Indo-Pacific Initiative that a Yoon government emphasizes and plans.
I see. So the ties between the two countries is important in terms of Indo-Pacific plan that South Korea is trying to aim for. Now, Professor Song, I'd like to tap on economic issues as well. South Korea is the biggest foreign investor in Vietnam with almost 9,000 companies already running there. What companies are located there, and what is it about Vietnam that's attracting many South Korean companies to invest?
Yeah, I have learned that South Korea is the largest foreign investor in Vietnam, but I wonder in cumulative investment might be the largest. I'm not sure. And currently, in the year of 2023, we have seen that the foreign direct investment into Vietnam has been dropped very much. So until May, the manufacturing got 61%, the financial sector 14%. Out of that, Singapore was the largest source of foreign investment in Vietnam, and the next is Japan and China. So we have seen, there are several regions out there, because of the world economy has suffered from some supply disruption and some declining growth rate, and particularly because of coronavirus, COVID-19 caused some economic growth rate very low, particularly in such Vietnam, some developing countries. So that would be the main reason. But currently, the Korean companies' investment in Vietnam has been particularly plunged so much. The reason is some experts argued that, actually stated that the regulation by the Vietnamese government has been increased a lot, and even the Vietnam government considering levy more taxes on it. So Korean companies think about not just, they feel some kind of a risk or uncertainty about the corporate environment and circumstances in Vietnam is because of the going ore and build up all the factories, and it's going to be very, sometimes it causes very serious problems, because it's more difficult to find a labor force in Vietnam, and then the increase of the wage, and also the regulations, such as, for example, the firefighting services should be established in the corporation. So that is that reduced some attractiveness of the foreign investment in Vietnam. But as it is seen in currently the current counterpart of President Yoon of the Vietnam president is Nguyen Vo Van Thuong. Vo Van Thuong is like a very new president, and the previous president of Nguyen Phuc, I can remember, Xuan Phuc, Nguyen Xuan Phuc has been, he has, as far as I know correctly, he has some scandals in because of the bribe and some other bad relationship with some foreign companies. So to that regard, our corporations and who has been in the Vietnam, as they think about again and potential risk out there. So that is the cause, and the primary cause is maybe taxation. Taxation would be the primary cause, I think.
Right. So South Korea was the biggest foreign investor in Vietnam, but has seen recent drop in the investment because of several reasons. Now, Professor Song, I'd like to ask you about trade as well. Vietnam is one of the 3 biggest trading partners of South Korea. And to further increase bilateral trade, the 2 leaders agreed to establish an electronic origin data exchange system. How is this going to help boost trade? And is this going to in any way help to increase the investment?
Yeah, actually, this electronic origin data exchange system, EODS, is just a paperless and facilitate the trade, and then the exports or imports does not have to prove that with some kind of written documents. The origin of the product is in some certain country, and for sure, particularly in the free trade agreement, it is quite important, because most favored nation rule has been applied. Then without such some credible and very environment, and without such proof, then the problem is there is some other countries who is not in some free trade agreement, they could export their product through the other countries. Such problem occurs in the United Kingdom, particularly Northern Ireland, in the European Union. So that is, to that regard, this kind of electronic origin data exchange system has been approved, and the MOU has been established since last year's October 1st, 31st. And that is a very, at least a good signal, But however, even though the trading partner the South Korea and the Vietnam, particularly the Vietnam, is the third largest trading partner with South Korea. Clearly, China and the U.S. and other countries are much bigger in terms of the monetary unit or monetary amount. So they are much bigger. But what is important is we have to understand about do not have too much rosy picture about the Vietnam economy, because currently Vietnam's per capita GDP is 103rd in the world. And it's clearly developing countries such as Vietnam has shown a very high level of the growth rate of GDP. That is for sure. So the future prospect is good, but still they import intermediate goods and make it assemble and sell it into some other advanced countries at a very low cost, at a very low price. So that is currently the main business activities. So therefore, clearly the relationship between Vietnam and South Korea, the economic ties needs to be increased for future, but at least in the short term and midterm, we have to be very prudent and do not have a too optimistic view on that. So that is always we need to think about.
Right, that is the aspect that we need to think about. Right, now Professor Park, I'd like to move on to security issues actually. President Yoon pointed out that North Korea's nuclear and missile programs are the most urgent regional security threat and noted that South Korea will seek to strengthen coordination with both Vietnam and ASEAN to help deal with this. What sort of coordination do you expect this to be?
Yeah, frankly speaking, to be honest, this is a mostly frequently asked question. So from the view of common people in Korea. But actually, the ASEAN is very reluctant to hear that in their position. You know, ASEAN has not historically supported or sympathized with our position, specifically on security issues with North Korea. In fact, this because there is an organization on this issue within ASEAN boundary, so-called ALF, ASEAN Regional Forum. So where the North Korea is also a member, including South Korea also. So almost all the Asian countries has participated in the organization centered in ASEAN. ASEAN wants to deal with the security problems within this boundary of organization. When it deals with ASEAN countries on security issues, it is better to talk about some more universal position and expect them to support our position. So I think so. This is not so much affirmative in dealing with security problems with North Korea. I think that we have to avoid as far as possible. You know?
Oh, interesting, interesting. So you're saying the ASEAN countries are quite sensitive about dealing with this matter that are related to North Korea. Interesting. Professor Song, the defense sector is another area in which both countries are trying to expand ties, and South Korea is to help strengthen Vietnam's maritime security capabilities. Against what backdrop is such a security deal coming, and in what ways could ties in the defense sector with Vietnam be broadened?
Recently, because of the Russian-Ukraine war, Korean defense industry has enjoyed very profitable and very lucrative business earnings. However, as the Professor Park has already a little bit mentioned about this kind of the ASEAN do not want to talk about some political or security issue in relation with North Korea. So I think even though the ASEAN countries and the Vietnam, including Vietnam, for example, Vietnam has waged war against China after 1975, 1978, 89. So still, the China became too strong and exert their power over the ASEAN and the Southeast Asia, the ASEAN countries, clearly the Vietnam does not like it. But however, they do not want to be involved with either some kind of political or tensions, problems with between particularly China and, for example, United States, and in relation with maybe Taiwan and North Korea. It's going to be very complicated issue and a complex issue. And considering the political system in Vietnam is the same as China. I mean, they have just one party country, and does rank one the strongest, politically the strongest person in Vietnam is not the president, who is a counterpart of President Yoon. Actually, his name is Nguyen Phu Trong. I'm sorry about to remember the Vietnamese the president's name. Yeah, Trong. But he was born in 1944, so he was almost 80 years old. He is like some kind of guardian and some kind of the custodian over the current president of the Boban Tuong. So considering that situation, as long as the top-ranked powerful person considers, they always consider their own benefit to the Vietnamese people, not just for other countries' benefit. So we have to consider that issues also.
I see. Now, I'd like to ask many more questions, but before I let our experts go, I'd like to ask this last question to our Professor Park. Having talks with Vietnamese students and instructors of Korean language was part of President Yoon's itinerary. That makes me wonder, how strong is Korea's influence in terms of soft power in Vietnam, and how could ties between future generations of each country be strengthened? Could you briefly tell us?
Yeah. The impact of Korea wave in Vietnam has been incredible. So if you think about it, we are really benefiting from the Korean wave without much effort. This time, the government is trying to convey the impact of Korean wave to the world more strongly through, I remember, K-Culture Initiative. So I'm also the vice member of the Minister of Culture. So for this year, for 5 years after this year, so they are planning a great the program on the K-Culture Initiative. So in that sense, I think Vietnam can open a new chapter in international cultural exchange under this government. So for this point, so President Yoon and his wife participate in some cultures, visit the cultural center and enjoy some cultural aspect. So this is a very different from other previous presidents' activities. And then the special parts of the program are still lacking though. But I think so we are somewhat so among the three countries, Korea, Japan, and China, so we are very weak in economic power, but we can draw a great attention in terms of a culture exchange.
Right, I see. It's so good to hear that our soft power is expanding, especially in ASEAN countries. Now, unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today's edition. Thank you, Professor Park and Professor Song, for your insights. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Now, that's all for Within the Frame tonight. We'll be next Monday with more in-depth stories. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the weekend, and goodbye.
Arirang TV is conducting a quality and satisfaction evaluation to enhance the broadcast service